Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 199. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where all we do is talk and discuss movies. I hope you all are having a great week so far. We're going to be covering the last movie of May that we got to check out on this episode. Can you believe it? We watched, I think, a total of 8 different movies in the month of May. We're only getting started with some of these summer blockbuster movies. So get ready, buckle up. There's so many more movies that we're going to be reviewing. But on this episode, we're talking about the last movie that we saw in May. And then on episode 198 of the Timeless Movie Podcast, if you haven't listened to it, please do me a favor. Go check it out, listen to it, provide your feedback because I went all in on A24's new horror film, Back Rooms. This film, for me, had such simple horror, but it was so simple in that it was very effective in making you feel tension, making you feel anxiety. And it was just all these different types of rooms, all these different types of production and design that went into making these rooms feel very awkward. I really dug the movie. But did I think it was timeless? Well, you're going to have to listen to episode 198 to find out what I thought about that movie. And also, please drop in your own comments. I want to hear your full thoughts. Did you enjoy Backrooms? Did you love it? Did you hate it? And did you think it was timeless? All right, last piece of housekeeping that I want to call out is if you could do me a huge favor, I've been mentioning it on a couple of podcasts, but please drop in some reviews. If you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast, I would greatly appreciate you guys leaving some reviews. That way we can grow this channel, reach a bigger audience, build a big community, and talk all about great movies that are coming out. We're already halfway through 2026, and we still have plenty of other movies to talk about. So again, please drop in those reviews, share the podcast, and if you have any feedback for me or episodes that you would want to see on this podcast channel, please reach out to me, timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. You can find it in the description, or I'll probably put it up if you're listening on YouTube as well. All right, let's get down to business because on this week's episode of the Timeless Movie Podcast, we're talking about the new film, a crime thriller, and it is called TUNER. Now, I had seen a trailer for this. I've seen the poster for some reason a couple times when I accessed the AMC app, but I had seen the trailer when I actually went to go watch the movie Passenger. And it's the same company that made Passenger, also made TUNER. And when I watched the trailer, I was really surprised. I saw Dustin Hoffman, I saw Leo Woodall, and just the way that they had a little bit of banter in that movie and what was going on, it seemed like a typical crime thriller. A guy gets in with the wrong group and now he has to find a way out to escape. I always like crime thrillers. I always like those kind of films that add a lot of suspense and you don't know where the story's going to go. So I ended up giving it a shot this past weekend. I watched it with my brother. And now that we've actually seen the movie, let's go ahead and segue into our non-spoiler section. That way I can tell you a little bit about the director, who comes out in the movie, and my overall thoughts. All right, TUNER is directed by Daniel Roher. Daniel Roher has made several films such as Ghost of Our Forest, Once Were Brothers, Navally, and Blink. In this film, TUNER, we have actors Leo Woodall, Havana Rose Liu, Dustin Hoffman, Leo Raz, and Tova Feldsha. Now, what the heck is TUNER about? Well, I'm happy to give you a little synopsis about this just to kind of get you a good idea as to what this movie could be about in case you haven't seen it. In TUNER, we are introduced to two characters, Harry and Nikki. Harry is played by Dustin Hoffman, and Nikki is played by Leo Woodall. Now, these two men are piano tuners in New York. They go around to different types of houses from wealthy individuals that own pianos, and they tune the piano just to make sure that everything works in case they're going to have some type of a performance or just to have the piano ready for any type of event. So what's interesting about this, though, is that Nikki actually suffers from a specific disorder that actually makes everyday sounds much louder than they normally are. So he always has to wear some type of earplug or actual headphones to block out noise because, New York is going to be super loud for him. Now, this ability could be a disorder for many, right? But for Nikki, he uses this skill to not only tune pianos, but also he finds out that he can actually crack safes. And so, with this new skill, it opens up a new opportunity for him to make a little bit more money on the side. However, this new job ends up putting his entire life at risk due to working with the wrong people. Now, what ends up happening to Nikki and these people that he works with? Well, I'm not going to talk about that here in the non spoiler section, but what I will talk about is what I felt after leaving the theater. After watching Tuner, I got to say that overall, I thought this movie was great. This film has the typical elements of a crime thriller. It has a really engaging story. It has characters that are interesting, but it also adds a couple of unique spins to this actual film. Now, I'm not going to say that they're crazy twists and turns, but it was unique enough to stand out and at least make it memorable for me as I left the theater. I also thought they did a really great job with balancing multiple different elements of the film. Not only the thriller aspect, but there's a bit of romance, there's drama, there's those kind of pieces that in most movies might not work. Maybe those are pieces that can be cut out, but this movie was only an hour and 49 minutes, and they were able to fit those three types of genres and balance it out really well. So I found it very interesting as you got to know more of the characters, you got to see their situations and how they would adapt to it. And also, I got to say, every scene felt like it had purpose. Nothing was out of place, nothing felt wasted. Everything that was filmed felt like it was adding to the next part of the story that was being told. So I really love when movies are very intentional in those ways and they find purpose for every character, every scene, and every moment. You know what else has purpose on this podcast? Pros and cons. That's really big purpose because it allows us to explain a little bit more about what we felt. I'm able to expand and give you more of my raw emotions and also kind of explain maybe what didn't work for the movie as well. So, why don't we segue over into the pros and cons section for Tuner? All right. First pro that I have for the movie Tuner has got to be the chemistry between Dustin Hoffman, Leo Woodall, and Havana Rose Liu. I mean, each of those characters, I cared about them. And I think that's the biggest compliment that I can give any movie, really. But specifically for Tuner, I cared about every single character. I wanted to know more about how Harry and Nikki got to work together as piano tuners. Harry's like a famous musician in this world, and now he's retired and he's losing his hearing. And, he's just working with his apprentice, Nikki, who has a disorder, but it's still a gift for him. Their banter in the first act of the movie was incredible, and I just wanted to see more and more of it. Then you get the introduction of Ruthie. Ruthie is a skilled pianist and she's going to school. She's trying to get into a program and work under a maestro of music as well. And so you get to see all three of them interact throughout the story. But all of it just felt so believable. Their chemistry really worked for me. That in the scenes that they were all in together, they would bounce off of each other so seamlessly. So I really dug how they were all able to really show off each character and make them all feel very different. Yet it always worked. Like it never took me out of the movie when I would watch Ruthie talk to Nikki or when Nikki would talk to Harry. Nothing felt awkward, which, I'm not saying that every movie feels that way when, something doesn't work, but especially when the chemistry is just on point, it just stands out even more that I start caring about, well, what's going to happen? Like, I don't want anything to happen to these characters. I want them to all, succeed or be happy towards the end of the movie. And I know that not every ending will be happy, but to me, the fact that I cared so much about these characters is a big win. Second pro that I have for Tuner is going to be the story elements that took place and how it really all connected so well. I love it when movies can kind of introduce different types of aspects, in the first act and have it come back in the third act and just completely full circle moment. I love when movies do that. There are various times where movies that maybe aren't reviewed or refined as well, they'll introduce something or they'll pop up with a type of scenario and then it never gets paid off. Here in Tuner, they introduce something, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but they introduce something in the first act. It gets paid off in the third act, and it causes chaos around Nikki and the people around him. And so those are the kind of moments where, as an audience member, I'm watching this movie, to me, when I was watching it, maybe that element wasn't as important, but then you find out, no, this I should have paid attention more because this element actually really does impact how how Nikki's going to live his life. One small decision that he makes can really ruin a good thing that he has. So I love it when films can kind of integrate those types of aspects into their stories. And once again, I'm going to repeat myself, but the film Tuner had intent. It had a purpose with showing you different elements, showing you who are these people that Nikki is working with. Can we trust them? Most likely in crime thrillers, we can't, but you never know. Maybe they have some type of a good intent for what they want to do and why they want to involve Nikki. But really liked how all the stories and all the elements of Tuner, they didn't fall into the typical tropes. That's, I think, maybe a better way to do it is or say it. They avoided the typical tropes of a movie that usually falls into this kind of traps where they'll show off how these two characters meet and it just feels cheesy, and they didn't do that in Tuner, at least in my opinion. All right, last pro that I have for the film Tuner is going to be the way that they represented the sound design for Nikki. So once again, Nikki has a disorder that actually affects his hearing on everyday noises. So when somebody talks really loud or an airplane goes by or anything, that actually impacts his hearing and causes him pain. So he always has to have earplugs on. He has these huge headphones that actually just block out all of the outside noise. And so the way that they would sometimes add in some of the sound design to give you the perspective of what would it sound like from Nikki's perspective? How would it actually, sound like if somebody's trying to talk to you and you can't hear, or somebody's trying to kind of get your attention and you have your headphones. And even when he's tuning some pianos, you can kind of hear it very muffled in some cases. But I think where it was used very effectively is when he's cracking some safes and noises get in the way of his mojo, get him really to almost get distracted a little bit because all that noise ends up messing up as he's trying to crack a safe and open up what's inside. And I thought that was really clever to include those elements of, well, it's not going to be easy for him every single time he opens a safe. There's got to be some type of a challenge, a roadblock. And they highlight a couple of those moments. And again, I really dug what were those moments that really kind of just sprung out of the movie where I'm like, oh yeah, like that definitely would alter the way that he would try to hear the safe. And, maybe it spend more time than usual opening it, which then runs the risk of being caught. So really dug how they kind of included those types of elements. When we get to spoilers, I'll talk a little bit more about what were those sounds, but I just thought it was cool how they included those kind of sound designs in the film. All right, cons section will be pretty quick because I really don't have any. I not saying that the movie is perfect. I always like to clarify just because I don't have any nitpicks at this moment doesn't mean that something could pop up. I've only seen the movie once, but in that one viewing, I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was great. I again once don't want to repeat myself on the pros, but there was really nothing that stood out that made me either break my immersion or make me not like what a character was saying. All the writing really worked, and again, the important aspect for me, the story worked. It was engaging. So no cons at this moment. So I think this is a perfect time for us to jump in to some spoilers. But before we do, if you don't want to be spoiled about the movie Tuner, please jump out of the podcast now, watch the movie, and then come back and on whatever platform you're listening to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, drop in your comments. Now that you've seen the movie, let me know if you agree with any of my pros and cons, or what were your favorite moments of the movie that stood out to you. Again, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, and that way we can have some good back and forth about Tuner. All right, I rambled long enough to give you guys enough of a break, but here we go. Spoilers start right now. Okay, where I wanted to start with spoilers is talking a little bit about the story and where I felt they avoided the tropes that typical crime thrillers fall into. Now, these are just going to be my opinions. Maybe when you guys watch Tuner, you're probably going to say, no, Victor, you're totally off, man. This is a trope. And if that's so, please drop it in the comment. I would love to hear it. But here's what I feel like the movie could have fallen into a generic thriller movie and didn't. So I have a couple points here. First one I want to talk about is the way that Nikki and Ruthie connect and fall for each other. In typical movies, they'll set this up where, okay, the love interest, in this case, Ruthie and Nikki, end up interacting in different types of scenes, and they immediately fall for each other. They go on dates. Here in Tuner, they actually don't fall for each other immediately. It actually kind of builds up, which again feels organic. It doesn't feel cheesy. What you end up seeing is that, Nikki is a piano tuner and he actually goes to the school that Ruthie is currently at, and he's going to be tasked to tune the piano. And this is where Nikki actually gets to show off his skill of being able to hear and understand which note is Ruthie playing on the piano. And so he just shows her skill, and you think, okay, this is where they're gonna ask each other out. Nope, completely walk away, and then they see each other again at the actual diner where Harry and Nikki are eating. And it's actually Harry, played by Dustin Hoffman, who actually tries to set them both up. He tells Nikki to go walk her to class. He does, and it's just an awkward walk. They both don't want to be there with each other. It feels like a real type of conversation that you would have with somebody that you really don't care for, and they're not really friends. And so it just feels very off. But once again, all of those scenes have intent. You start getting to know more about Ruthie. You get to know about how shy Nikki is and how he feels that his disorder, his hearing disorder, might cause a problem. But eventually, they do fall for each other because Nikki ends up helping Ruthie with the piano that she has, that she got from her grandmother. And from there, everything flourishes. Their relationship grows. So those are the kind of setups that I really love in movies. And again, in a thriller film, they were able to include that romance without having it be too overbearing or too much that it takes over the film. It still felt suspenseful. It still felt thrilling, but they were able to really add in those extra little scenes to make that chemistry between Nikki and Ruthie believable. So that was one of the tropes that I liked that they avoided, which is not making that romance feel cheesy. Second trope that I think they avoided really well was the way that they highlighted Nikki's ability to crack safes. In any other movie, and especially in action movies, they would show a montage and show like, here's how he easily was able to crack safe or like knock it off, and maybe he already had that ability and they never show why. What I loved about Tuner is that they gave Nikki a reason to try to understand how to crack a safe. Why did he do it in the first place? Well, it's because Harry, for some reason, like forgot the code of his safe. He seems like he's having moments of just forgetting and his memory's kind of going away. And so he asks Nikki if he can just try to figure out how to open it because there's some important pills that he needs to take for his health. And so he takes it home. Nikki watches some YouTube videos, and he ends up realizing that if he takes out his earplugs, he has that heightened sense of sound, and he could basically hear the clicks of the different types of dials as he goes to the different types of numbers around that safe. And so again, it felt organic. It felt believable that he's not just doing it just to try to get some money. No, he initially does it just to help out his friend Harry. He just wants him to be okay. He wants him to be healthy. So he figures out that he actually has an advantage for his disorder. He can now hear and really just understand the clicks that happen when he's trying to crack safe. So I thought that was really clever and not just bypassing that very quickly. They explain it really well. The next point that I want to make about skipping out on some tropes is the people that Nikki gets involved with. So in any typical movie, you would have these bad guys that end up forcing our protagonist to join. And if he doesn't join, then they'll hurt him. Instead, this group of individuals that are led by Yuri, and Yuri is played by Leo Raz, they're a security company. So they actually protect all of the stuff that wealthy individuals have around New York. So their security company is legit. However, Yuri and his group actually do steal. So they are thieves, but they steal from only the rich. So they're almost like I guess like a Robin Hood type of a comparison where, Yuri, I think, tries to explain to Nikki, hey, these people that are rich, they don't even know what items they have. They have so much. So what do? We just take some of it off their hands and we sell it and we give it to people that, that do deserve it and do need it. And so their intent is at least somewhat trying to frame it as it's positive, but they're still bad guys in a way, right? They're just not as bad as that. They don't kill anybody. They don't hurt anybody, not yet. But I really like that kind of a twist where Yuri and the group are trying to do it for a good cause in a way. They're trying to steal from just rich people, wealthy people that have millions and millions of dollars and sometimes billions, and they won't recognize that something goes missing. That's until the third act, and we'll talk about that. But that was a nifty little twist that they kind of included there. And then another thing that I want to call out that was a trope that I think they really avoided. Two more, and I promise we'll move on. The next one was towards the end of the movie. Typically in a crime thriller, you'll have a show off between the good guy and the bad guy. In this case, we do have a show off between Nikki and Yuri, where Nikki just needs to try to find an item that was stolen, and he knows that Yuri has it. And so he wants to basically get it back. He also just wants to stop stealing from these different types of safes that he's been cracking over the last couple of, I guess, months or weeks that he's been in this world. And they have a face off, but in typical crime thrillers, you would expect to see one of them to be killed or to something happening to one of the characters. Instead, both parties walk away. Yuri ends up walking away. And he doesn't get taken to jail. He actually comes out on top because they were actually able to steal multiple $1 million from a crypto account, and Nikki gets to walk away. Now, Nikki did get hurt. He got beat up by Yuri. He actually got his earlobe cut off. He got tortured in a way. It was really rough to watch because what Yuri did was use a foghorn to basically blast it near the ears of Nikki to really damage and really rupture his eardrum. It was really hard to watch. And yet, both characters ended up coming out fine at the end. Although, yes, I mean, Nikki's earlobe is cut, but he ended up not getting any of his family members hurt. He still had Ruthie. He still had his life. And the good thing about it is also that Yuri can't actually do anything else to Nikki because Nikki actually has some dirt on Yuri. And he could call the police if he wanted to, but told him, hey, just walk away. I just need this watch, this stolen item, and then we're good to go. And so I really dug that neither party, neither good or bad, was really killed or gotten rid of at the end of the movie. They both actually just walk away. And so very refreshing kind of a take. Okay, last but not least, this is, I promise, is the final trope that I noticed that they avoided that typical movies like thrillers don't avoid. And it's if there is some type of romance, every single movie, and this isn't just for thrillers, this is for any kind of movie when there's a romance, there's always a conflict that ends up splitting up our protagonists with their love interest. And there is a moment where Nikki and Ruthie end up fighting, they separate, and every time in every other movie, you expect them to get back together at the end. And what did Tuner do? They didn't bring them back together. Now, they do share a scene at the end of the movie, and you finally get to see Nikki play the piano because up until this point, because of his disorder, he couldn't play the piano because the noises were too loud, they would affect him, and he just didn't find the joy in it. But because his ears were ruptured and he actually didn't need the plugs anymore, now he could actually play the piano and not have it hurt him anymore, not cause him pain. And so he can finally play for free, and he plays his first song, his first work in front of Ruthie. And so that's how the movie ends. Just him being able to play in front of the person that he loves, and he's still able to hear when a note is very flat. So that was a really cool touch at the end. But that was one of the tropes that, again, I appreciated, is that they didn't end the movie with them kissing and then making up. No, things are complicated. Life is complicated. After this, you don't know. It's up to your interpretation. Do Ruthie and Nikki get back together? Who knows? But I love that they didn't just, immediately have them be in a relationship again. No, you got to work towards it. It's got to be organic. And so that was one of the last tropes that I wanted to bring up that this movie did not fall into. Very long-winded, but I thought you guys would at least appreciate that there's a couple of areas where I feel like this one didn't fall into the typical traps of what other movies do. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of those points. Again, I'd be happy to kind of discuss and dissect even more scenes that maybe I didn't catch that you guys did. And again, if you did notice any other tropes that they avoided, well, please put those down below as well. Okay, couple of other things that I want to talk about this movie before we wrap it all up is a couple character moments and scenes. To me, one of my favorite characters was Harry, played by Dustin Hoffman. Again, he was a famous musician. He also played the piano, but now that he's retired, he's losing his hearing. He obviously is in a different part of his life. But man, in the first act, Dustin Hoffman was on fire. His banter, the jokes that he would make, the lines that he would deliver, it all just felt so smooth. And it just really made me appreciate like his character and how he was trying to do the best for Nikki and setting him up in his life in a proper way, even setting him up with Ruthie. But then something happens to his character. He actually ends up getting a heart attack and he actually passes away. And that actually got me a little nervous when I was watching the movie because he was really bringing in this energy to the character of Harry. He was bringing this energy that kind of had this really good pace throughout the movie. And I thought, okay, well, is the energy going to shift? Are things going to slow down? Instead, the movie flowed just as well without him. And you could also feel the emotion just from looking at Nikki's face. There was a really cool montage at the beginning of the movie where you just see Nikki and Harry having this banter. Harry just talking and talking, talking, Nikki only responding here and there. And you could just see the camaraderie that they have. And then there's a separate montage where Nikki's by himself after Harry's gone. He still has to go tune pianos. He still has to drive around New York. And you could just see that there is just no life in him. He has no emotion. Everything just feels much more dark without Harry. And so I think they delivered those kind of energy and scenes very well. And props to the movie and props to the director for really setting up this movie and not having the absence of Harry impact the movie all the way through. Second character I'm going to bring up is Ruthie. Ruthie's played by Havana Rose Liu, and I really dug the way that they set up this character. Ruthie wasn't just like a simple one-dimensional love interest. She was actually a committed pianist. She would go through various different types of actions where she just wanted to be perfect in her work. She wanted to be the one that like would create a work that would get her recognized. And she actually wanted to work under a maestro, and she was working various different types of long hours. She would express that to Nikki when they would go out on dates. And again, what I loved is that even though she was with Nikki, she never really wanted to commit all the way through to the relationship. She just wanted to focus on, hey, I don't want to be distracted. I need to make sure that my work comes out perfect. That way, I get the career that I want. I get what I've been working for. And so I love it when characters have multiple dimensions, not just the protagonist. In this case, Ruthie, she had her own goals. She had her own ambitions, and she wasn't going to let Nikki or anything else stop her from getting there. So I thought that was really cool that they added it within this film. All right, and then last but not least, I wanted to call out a really cool scene that happened when Nikki was cracking open a safe. This is one of the last jobs that Yuri wanted Nikki as a part of. And the reason why is because it's really their biggest hit. They were trying to open a safe that was from somebody that had like some type of cryptocurrency locked behind it. And so Nikki, as usual, tries to get everybody to quiet down. He needs complete silence. But what was so tricky about this situation is that he was in a residential area and there was actually airplanes passing by every so often, and it kept messing up his flow, messing up his actual mood as he was trying to open and listen to the different types of clicks and clacks of the safe. And so he told Yuri and the guys, hey, I need you guys to let me know when the next plane is coming. That way I can stop, pause, take a breath, and then get back into the flow. And so they worked out a system where, they would have one of the guys, Benny, come in and or be outside and alert the group when a plane was coming. That way Nikki can actually prepare, take a break, remember where he was at, and then work on the combination again. And so that, again, very clever how they were able to incorporate challenges for Nikki so that it wasn't just easy for him to open every single safe. That was a really cool touch. But also what made this scene even more intense is that in this same moment, once they open up the actual safe, Nikki actually gets held at gunpoint. The owner of the safe comes into the house, has a gun pointed at him, and of all the people that you could have guessed would have shot this guy that had a gun pointed at Nikki, it was actually Benny. Benny, who was, really the odd man out of this group of Yuri. He was trying to be taught how to be a man, but he was the opposite of that. He didn't want to be that kind of a man. He wanted to just love dogs, and he just wanted to hang out, eat Takis, and like all this stuff. And so he was actually the one that pulled the gun and killed the man that was trying to really use Nikki as a hostage. So really intense scene, added a lot of anxiety, but Nikki ended up making it out alive as well. So really crazy stuff. Really, I think that's all I got for the movie Tuner. There was so many great things that I like. Again, to me, the things that stand out are that it didn't fall for the typical tropes, if that makes sense. It didn't fall for the typical things that a lot of movies will do. It tried to change it up. And maybe for you guys that have seen it, maybe you don't see the twists and turns as crazy, and that's totally fine. But to me, I felt like the characters were interesting. I wanted to know how everything would come out. I wanted to make sure that they were all safe, and obviously I would hope that Nikki would have a better life after working with Yuri. Um, oh, I guess one thing that I forgot to mention is that there's also a really cool cameo at the end. The maestro that Ruthie wants to work for is actually actor Gene Reno. I've seen him in so many movies, and so I didn't even realize that he came out in this movie until I saw his part in the third act. And when I saw him, I just looked over to my brother. And I was like, "No way, it's Gene Reno!" And so, really love it when they don't let you know who are the actors that come out for these little minor roles. But even in those minor moments, I thought Gene Reno killed it as well. All right. Two last questions I got for you guys, and then we'll wrap up the podcast. First one, should you check out Tuner in theaters? In my personal opinion, I would say yes. Definitely worth a watch in theaters. I think it's an engaging story. I think you'll really like the characters. You might not like all of them, but I think even Yuri, I want to give a shout out to Lior Raz. He played this character of Yuri very well. And so just want to give him a shout out. But every single performance, I think, really landed for me. And once again, I'm going to repeat myself, but there is purpose. There is intent in this movie. There's actually something that matters to these characters and their entire situations. So I think it'll keep it very fresh and keep it very engaging as you're watching it in theaters. So that's my recommendation. Go check out Tuner. All right, last but not least, the most important question of this podcast is Tuner a timeless movie? In my personal opinion, as of today, I'm going to say that Tuner is a timeless movie, just barely making it on the timeless side. If there was like a fence, it made it over to the fence onto the timeless side. I love the relationship of Harry and Nikki, their banter, their friendship, even though it was very short. I mean, it only was in the first act of the movie. That should show you that their chemistry was so strong that I wanted to know more. I wanted to know how they got to meet. I wanted to have Harry continue to come out in the movie. Unfortunately, he doesn't, but it just that relationship went a really long way. I cared about Nikki and Ruthie. I wanted them to end up together at the end of the movie. It just everything about the characters and the story to me was just so refreshing and so cool and so awesome to watch that again it has those qualities that stand out, and I think I would want to rewatch this movie. I would want to maybe own it as a Blu-ray because I just found it so different from some other crime thrillers that I've recently seen. So that is my opinion. But to anybody listening out there, what do you think about Tuner? I want to know your opinions and your thoughts. Did you enjoy the characters? Did you enjoy some of the scenes of when Nikki is cracking some of the safes? I want to hear everything about your experiences watching this movie. And more importantly, I want to know if you thought Tuner was timeless. All right, everybody. Appreciate you all listening to my full thoughts about this movie, Tuner. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 199 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out our next episode. It's a big one. It's episode 200 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. You won't want to miss it because we're going to be covering a new movie that comes out in theaters or streaming. We'll break it down, we'll spoil it, and then we'll decide if it is timeless. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to y'all later.